Hello everyone, welcome to our special Gojek session. I'm very excited to be joined here by two of Gojek's top executives. We have Raditya Wibowo, or Dito, the head of transport for Gojek, and Catherine Sutjahyo, who heads Gojek's food delivery service, GoFood. Welcome guys, thank you for being here. So this will be a bit of a follow-up from our previous Gojek panel in January, where we had Catherine and also Aldi of GoPay sharing their thoughts and insights into their journey at Gojek and plans ahead. But obviously, a lot of things have changed since then, not only with the pandemic, but also at Gojek itself. There's been quite a few changes and developments, which should be give us a lot of interesting talking points and topics to cover in this discussion. So let's get straight into the questions. I'll start with Catherine. I'll have to start with some COVID questions because it's been quite a game changer for a lot of industries. But for GoFood, how has the impact been? We know your numbers have remained strong, but behind that, I'm sure there must have been some shaky moments, some moments where moments of uncertainty, moments of difficulties. Can you share with us about those things?
Absolutely. Hi, Ardi. Good to see you again. I can't believe it's almost a year. So
Yes.
yeah, it's been a very challenging year to say the least, right? Like what you say, this is something that I don't think in last January when we last met we ever thought this is going to be the 2020 we are facing. Definitely, we are very glad to say like what you said earlier, right? The number remains strong. We are very well positioned and very lucky in a way that food delivery remains being one of the essential kind of services, critical kind of thing, especially with the COVID situation. People are trying to stay home more, trying to minimize their interaction. I think we stay true to our mission, is basically providing convenience customer experience to all of our customer in this challenging times. But you're absolutely right. At the beginning, it's not like all smooth sailing because this thing kind of like hit us like with 100 miles an hour overnight, right? So in that sense, it's thanks to the team, right? We are super ready when the thing hits. Dito will share more as well what we did on the transport, but from food overnight, basically, I think within 2 weeks, I remember that in March we launched the contactless delivery, cashless delivery, did the changes in our product, enable kind of like customer and driver to have like minimize kind of their contact. So this is kind of like adding what we call is like the sticky chat. So if you remember last time in Gojek, when you order GoFood, the moment your order get dropped, you wouldn't be able to see the chat between you and the driver. But then we changed that. For example, that's one of the minor changes. We allow to chat the chat to stay longer, because after the driver leave it, the customer might not see it right away, and then they will have to find the food. This is the kind of simple changes we do. Also, how we can make sure that we encourage our customer to use more cashless, minimize the touch of the money as well. On top of that, we're also doing a lot of changes on the merchant side, because as you can see, right, I mean, as you can imagine, a lot of people are getting more concerned over the hygiene and safety factor. So we did a lot of efforts on our merchant side, how to help them to remain safe, not just when they are providing or like preparing the food, but also for their employees as well. So we did a lot of kind of what we call the temperature card. All the orders come with a temperature card for the people who prepare the food, the cashier, as well as the rider who is delivering the food as well. So that's just one of a very few example of many different kind of changes we do. The good thing is, I think it's become a new kind of a process as well. We continue to work on what other hygiene, what other safety kind of measures we can continue to improve on as the thing's still ongoing right now. So this has become a new kind of a standard of how we are handling all this thing, how the customer getting used to the process as well.
All right. Dito, I guess when we're talking about GoFood, transport is somewhat part of the equation because the Go Ride drivers are the ones that deliver the food. But for ride hailing itself, we understand that it's been quite severely impacted because of the social distancing measures, the regulations from the government. But how's your team handling it? And are you finding some blessings in disguise or some positives out of this current situation for transport?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think for transport, definitely, we're definitely very affected by the ongoing pandemic, right? To be frank, like during the peak of the pandemic, actually, the utilization of our drivers kind of ended up at all-time lows because people were just not going out, and neither should they have been going out, right? So in a way, like I think in terms of thinking about our business, I think like when the pandemic first hit, like our first priority was really ensuring the safety and welfare of everyone in our ecosystem, especially the drivers, because they were the most affected, right? So I think that the good thing is because of our platform model, the drivers are not just doing transport, they're also doing food, they're doing groceries, they're doing all of these other services that actually people tend to need more during the pandemic because they can't go out themselves, right? So in a way that's kind of helped increase the utilization again as well from the peak of the pandemic. But what we've been doing for the drivers is really, one, focusing on how we can support them financially and socially. So we set up a Gojek Partner Support Fund, actually funded by salary contributions from top management in Gojek, among other things. So that's something we've done. We've worked with banks and financial institutions to provide low interest loans to drivers and distribute basic necessities as well. So that's one thing we focus on. Second is health and safety. So really ensuring that since our drivers I can work from home. A lot of our employees can work from home. Our drivers didn't really have that option, so we wanted to make sure that as they are out and about, being the heroes and serving everyone in the city who needs things, we wanted to make sure that they continue to be safe. So we focused a lot on we've set up something called Posko Aman or safety posts throughout the big cities we operate in, where the drivers have to go there regularly to get their temperature checked and to get their vehicle disinfected before they can start taking more orders. So this is for their safety and also for the safety of our consumers. Also, we've done things like distribute plastic screens to our four-wheeler drivers and our two-wheeler drivers, and we don't actually charge more for these. So that's been the approach so far. And actually, another thing for the drivers is trying to give them more opportunities to earn income. So one actually interesting things that's come out of this, maybe silver lining as well, is we've actually launched a new feature in our driver app that basically lets them do other things to make more revenue. For example, validate GoFood merchants, or collect information on pickup points, or collect information on, at this mall, how much is the parking fee, right? So, and they actually get paid for doing these jobs for us. And it's useful for the consumer experience as well. So this is an example of, an adaptation we've made to try and ensure the welfare of our driver partners throughout the pandemic. You asked about a silver lining. I think, one, I guess, silver lining that happened is that actually all of our Gojek branded services are now generating positive margins on a per product basis, including transport. And I think a lot of this has been driven by just some of the tweaks we've made to further improve the efficiency of how we match supply and demand in our marketplace. So in a way, the pandemic has had pretty tremendous impact on our transport business, but we focused on ensuring the safety and welfare of our drivers. And an interesting silver lining has actually been, the improved positive margins in all of the Gojek branded products.
I see. Okay. Catherine, just going back to the uptick for GoFood, can you give some context to that? Because some people might think that the logic is that we're in a recession, a so-called recession. The economy is not doing so well. People are staying at home. So one would think that people would want to try to save their money by maybe cooking at home, doing their own meals, rather than ordering out. are you seeing a different trend on the ground? What's been driving this uptick for GoFood?
Thank you for asking this question. It's very important. But before that, I would like to add a little bit from what Dito shared as well, right? As you know that the supply, when I say the supply, is like the driver fleet of Gojek is basically always a shared driver fleet, right? So I mean, like the driver can do the Go Ride, like what you mentioned, can do Go Food, can do Go Send, and all this kind of stuff. I think this is how the ecosystem, the agility of Gojek as a platform kind of help us through this period as well, hopefully helping the driver as well. Because as you can see, you mentioned the uptick in GoFood. Same thing happened in the logistic as well, right? Because people are staying home, they don't go out to purchase things themselves. So they kind of like send things from point A to point B, or like to each other through GoSend as well. So I mean, like you start seeing the uptick, not just in GoFood, but also, for example, in our GoSend product. So having this joint kind of a supply of the drivers, right? It helps because we kind of can move things around, and hopefully the impact, the end impact to the driver is gonna minimize because of we are able to kind of compensate from one product to the other. But yeah, as what Dito mentioned, I think we are very privileged in this period, is because not just we achieve the uptick of the food and the logistic, but also every single product, because of the discipline looking into the economics and stuff and the situation, we managed to make every product a positive contribution margin, like positive economics, like what Dito mentioned. But to your question, do we see the changes in the customer? Absolutely. Let me give an example, right? Prior to the COVID, the simplest example is think of a college town, think of a university town, right? A lot of our customer last time prior to COVID, and like some segment is these university students, kos-kosan, right? You can imagine all of us been there, done that. You don't really cook much when you're a university students. You either like buy or you just kind of like order or something like that. So what we see is the movement of the order happens during this COVID, because a lot of the university students came back home to their hometown, so they can save on their costs. Kos-kosan money, but also for them, because the school are not open, everything is virtual, right? So in that sense, is we start seeing the shift. The interesting part here is this, Ardi, actually the basket size increase. So the value per order has increased during this pandemic situation. Why? Because people are ordering as a family. If last time, right, I mean, people are ordering more kind of like as an individual or something like that, and now it's like people are ordering in the larger kind of chunk. This is help your answer your question as well. What about the recession and so on and so forth? For food delivery, people always look at the delivery price. So with the cost of the food, when they are ordering a bigger basket size, you can kind of like amortize the delivery price in the wider basket as well. I think that's how people are like organically managing such thing. That's the reason why I think the number has been quite resilient. There is a little bit of shift of behavior here and there, but total all in all, I think we've shown pretty strong numbers.
Okay, and this uptick in you said Go Food and Go Send and maybe groceries too. Does it compensate? Does it make up for the drop in transport, especially from the driver's perspective, their income and so on? Can you explain a bit?
From the number of transaction, as you can imagine, transport, feel free to add, the transport, in terms of number of transaction, is one of the highest one, right? So of course, the number probably not fully compensate that, but exactly like what Dito mentioned, we start being innovative in a different way to kind of like compensate the income of the drivers, right? The Gojek is the one that the name of the new income source for the driver that Dito mentioned. So one thing that is interesting is like what you said, the recession led to, unfortunately, quite numbers of layoff, right? People are losing their job, or the jobs getting kind of like cut, the scope, or so on and so forth. And as you can imagine, typically a culinary business is always the go-to kind of like people say, hey, I can cook from home now. What GoFood has been enabling the country is not just people have a restaurant has extra income from the online, but also enable people who previously passive, being at home, not being able to earn that. Now, if they have a good skill in cooking, baking, or something like that, with a little bit of a managerial kind of skill, business skill, they can start a business themselves. So the interesting part is between March until September, we get a huge influx of a new GoFood merchant. And then a lot of it, we have a study with University of Indonesia. A lot of them are first-time business owner, Ardi. They're trying it out, right? And that's why in GoFood separate point, we also set up a community to kind of like teach, to kind of like communities to kind of like share learning for this first-timer business owner. But to answer that question is because there's a huge flux of a new merchant. When we are verifying, we're using our driver partner as well to be the one who's doing a driver check, drive to the restaurant, taking a photo. Yes, this is a real merchant, and so on and so forth.
I see. Do you want to add anything to that, Dito?
Yeah. Maybe just to add. So, like I think today, I think like the peak of the pandemic, or at least in Indonesia, when it was when the utilization dropped to really really low, was probably around March and April when it kind of first started. And I think like since then, it's actually there's been a bit of recovery as well, but it's definitely like it definitely ebbs and flows according to the to how the situation evolves, right? And I think that is kind of something that is also out of our control and that we just have to adapt to, right? I think again, the priority is making sure that whoever needs to go somewhere, we can still serve, right? And that the drivers continue to be safe. Utilization wise, these days it's better than it was during the peak of the pandemic for sure, but I would say probably not back to 2019 levels either, right? Despite growth in some of the other services. Now, so what continues to be a priority is really trying to find alternative revenue streams as well for those on our platform, right? I think I told you about the Gojek one. I think another pretty cool one that we recently launched is actually GoScreen. So this is it's an advertising platform that we put on the back of the bike, and you can actually customize the content according to the area, like where the motorcycle is at, and it can actually count impressions or how many people actually see the billboard. So this I think will be really interesting to see how it plays out. And I think like more and more initiatives like this are what we will continue to work on throughout as we kind of weather out the rest of this pandemic.
Sticking to the topic of driver welfare, you explained that you're trying to find alternative revenues for the drivers. But other than that, what initiatives or what programs have you started to support to help your drivers through this difficult period?
Yep. So like so as I mentioned, I think it's basically roughly three large buckets of things that we do, right? I think one is providing direct social and financial assistance, right? So in the early days of COVID, I think we were actually the first in Indonesia to announce income assistance to our driver partners who test positive for COVID or who have to be quarantined. So obviously now I think that's just kind of standard, but I think we were kind of the first to announce that in the early days of the pandemic. Then we set up the partner support fund, funded by contributions from employee salaries and all, which has been doing things like, for example, helping drivers with meal vouchers, or also distributing basic goods that all the drivers need. And I think the what's nice is that we also have we actually have three super apps in our ecosystem, right? We have the driver app, the merchant app, the customer app, and most people only see the customer app, but actually what the driver app has is also it has a digital wallet as well for the drivers. So it has a system to distribute vouchers for example for our for partners who we work with for driver benefit programs. So all of this actually definitely helps us distribute the social and welfare initiatives. So that's one, right? Second is just continuing to push on the health and safety initiatives. I told you about the Posko Aman and the plastic screens. There's definitely this is something that continues to evolve for sure, right? Because I think you can never go too far on these safety initiatives, I guess. So like we've been experimenting with different things as well for the motorcycles, for example. Like we actually brought back hair nets recently, which is something that we actually launched with in 2015. Because the traditional motorcycle taxi experience in Jakarta Sometimes the helmet would be kind of wet and gross, and we used to give out hairnets when we first started. That didn't really scale, but actually, given the pandemic today, it's something that we've actually brought back because definitely something that our customers still care about. Then and then the last one is on the new revenue streams, which I think there's the Gojek thing, there's the Go Screen thing, and this is something we will continue kind of working on. Yeah.
I can add a little bit on that one. So the first one, the program that Dito mentioned, right? Again, we have to be kind of like really creative, right? In this period. So in the first few months, actually continuing until now, the one that Dito mentioned is basically we are distributing through the foundation. So basically we set aside kind of a starting fund, call it like that, right? This is the one that Dito mentioned, leadership management, and then some kind of like salary budget. We set aside, become a kind of a seeding fund of this foundation. Then after that, we do a couple of a raise as well for this foundation to basically help people in our ecosystem. This is not just driver, but also if you think about it, it's really, really small mom and pop merchant as well. They got impacted quite severely as well with the situation, right? So what we did is we take advantage of our ecosystem as well. For example, the best example is what we call driver affordable meal, driver family meal. If you remember, Indonesia got hit kind of like twice with this COVID. What do I mean by that? When the COVID hits, typically, when the COVID hits kind of like after 2-3 months, it's kind of like taper off a little bit, right? People kind of getting used to it. But if you remember that time we had the fasting period. Fasting period, people don't eat as much, right? When we are relying on the food delivery, then after that fasting period started as well, what do we do? That is basically the peak of a pandemic for us as well. So what happened is basically we also realized on the other hand, the smaller merchant suffered the most. Why? When everyone on the top of their mind, the concern is about hygiene and safety, customer those days tend to go to the larger merchant because they feel that they have a better kind of like a hygiene safety standard compared to the small mom and pop. So they got hit as well. So we come up with this kind of a program to kind of like marry the two, right? So we basically whitelisted the mom and pop merchant to say like, hey, why don't you prepare a family meal for 3 or 4 people? And then driver also through the Posko Aman, so we distributed this the family meal voucher, and then the driver can claim it and for them to bring home for their break fasting, for example. So in one go, right, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone in a way, because you help the merchant but also helping the drivers. So this is the kind of thing that we have to really like think on our feet and come up with something that not just helping one side of our ecosystem but the other side as well, and marry the two. Same thing, right? A lot, if you remember, Indonesian, I always say that Indonesian, the gotong royong is crazy. It's super inspiring, right? And then the customer, actually the idea come from a customer. They say like, hey, they start ordering food, and when I order food, I order extra as well for the driver. And then they start like say, hey, this is for you, right? So the merchants start seeing that, the merchants start having a driver menu. If you remember that, you still see it right until now. So when the customer order, they also order for the driver as well. A lot of these many different kind of programs. Some is really like started up by us, by Gojek, but some of it is actually really ideas from a customer, merchant, driver, and it's like quite numbers of them.
Yeah. To add to that, I think a lot of the grassroots actions we saw from our driver community was also very inspiring. There was a lot of drivers helping other drivers to just kind of organically. And whenever we see something like that, we definitely try to help support and grow that as well. But I think to the second Kat's point, I actually have been very impressed and inspired by all of the a lot of the things that our merchant and driver communities have done and pulled through to kind of help each other throughout the pandemic.
Okay, interesting. Just one last question on driver welfare. Is about the omnibus law. What do you make of it, and how do you think it might impact your operations? Dito, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think I I guess like when we think of our relationship with our driver partners, it is really, like I think like I think ultimately it's about just, ensuring that, ensuring that they can continue to rely on our platform to make a living, right? And basically our priority is just to help them continue to be able to do that even throughout this pandemic.
You want to add to that, Catherine?
Yeah, I think like exactly what Dito says, right? If you think about it, our ecosystem, we are very well positioned, right? We have what about 2 million driver partners, right? They are a partner of us. They are we call them micro entrepreneur. They run their own business, they manage their own time. So right, our relationship has always been is basically they are our partner, not the employees, right? They are not.
Yes.
Same thing for our merchant as well. They are our partner as well. That's why we call them Mitra Gojek, Mitra GoFood, right? That's essentially what it is. But like what you see, right, when we are doing all this program during this COVID, it's because we believe that we have to take care of the ecosystem. It's not because of what is required of us, to be very honest, right? But it's because we believe that we all exist because we have one another. We all exist because of this ecosystem. Again, it's not because it's what required of us, but we believe that this is what we need to do as an ecosystem. Gojek will not be here without our Mitra driver. Gojek will not be here without our Mitra merchant. I think that's how we are seeing it, right? We are always gonna strive to provide the best for anyone who's in our ecosystem, whether it's like required or not required by law, right? But what we do here is basically we want to take care of our ecosystem. That's essentially.
Yeah, because Gojek only grows when all kind of three parts of the ecosystem are taken care of, right? Not just the consumers, but drivers and merchants. You can't only try to grow one without taking care of the others. And actually, like in a way, ensuring the welfare of our drivers and merchants is actually ultimately the best thing for improving our customer experience as well. Because happy drivers will also give better service, and the marketplace will also then it'll basically kickstart that flywheel, right?
Okay. Let's go back to your growth at GoFood. You reach operational profitability. Given the recent surge, do you think you can be able to reach net profit soon?
We hope so. There's definitely the goal. I cannot, if you ask me when, I cannot disclose that as yet. But as what you say, right? I think there are multiple different ways to go about that, right? And we are definitely, there's no one silver bullet. You know this industry, right? There is no one silver bullet for that. But then we are also here to build sustainable services for again the three members of our ecosystem. So yeah, that's definitely the goal.
Okay, and Dito, on transport, there's this whole notion of the transport business model not being a feasible business model for sustainability, for profitability. What's your take on this? Is it something that Gojek that you accept and try to work around, or is it something that Gojek still trying to prove wrong?
So I think it's a really interesting question because I guess definitely for the longest time it's kind of felt that way, right? Like people feel like transport. Yes, transport brings the volumes. It's the largest use case, but can you actually make money from it? And I actually think what we've actually interestingly managed to prove, over the last 6 to 12 months is that actually yes, transport can generate profits and kind of drive that profitability also for the rest of the platform, right? Because as we mentioned earlier, all our Gojek branded products are now generating positive margins, including transport, which definitely indicates a strong path to profitability. Yes, our top line or our revenues are still kind of lower now because there's less mobility in the market in general. But we are well positioned to kind of capture, that wave of recovery as markets kind of start reopening again, as the pandemic situation evolves. So, to answer your question, I actually think that, one interesting thing we found over the last 6 to 12 months is that actually that narrative or that preconception that transport will not make money is actually not exactly true, right? Because we've actually proven that it can.
And when we talk about profitability, particularly at the group level, some people say maybe because of the intense competition between you and your competitor, some people believe that the only viable or the most viable way of reaching profitability is to call some kind of a truce, maybe reach an agreement between the two parties to maybe end the fighting and the burn, if you like. What's your view on this? Do you agree, or is there another way of reaching this that mark of profitability?
I'll start with that. I think it's the thing is this, right? I don't say that it's about a truce or something like that. I think why if you call it the burn, right, at the beginning, is because both parties, or like all parties, if you think about it, because it's not just a two players market. If, for example, right, a lot of market is not just two players market. It's because everyone is trying to grow. Everybody is trying. In the early days, when you are kind of like growing the customer base, any kind of business, we know is always going to be the investment period. I think that's how we are seeing it as well, right? But at the end of the day, it's a rational business as well. It's a rational companies as well. Of course, everyone will start aiming to reach kind of like sustainability, like what you say. So I think that rationale will kick in at some point, right? And I think that's basically what we start seeing in the market as well.
And you mentioned there before about having actually not just one super app, but you have like 3 apps, one for the consumer, one for the driver, one for the merchants. Can you explain to us, give us an insights on how the 2 other apps that's often overlooked, how they play a role in sort of also generating revenue for the company and adding value to the company too? Vito, you want to take this one?
Go ahead, Dit.
Yeah, so I think I talked a lot about what the driver app does already so far, right? But yeah, I think it is basically a kind of one-stop shop for the vision is to make it like a one-stop shop for drivers to basically make more income and also get support and see what they can do to what they can do to increase their income on the Gojek platform as well, right? So the app has easy driver support, it has safety features, it links to their digital wallet, very important for us to also distribute some of the social and welfare initiatives we talked about earlier. It has an earnings recap, and it connects them, it connects them also to parties outside our ecosystem, for example, through the Go Screen initiative, right? The Go Screen initiative, which is basically mobile advertising you put on the bikes. Those are actually external advertisers, and the driver also earns a cut from the advertising that they display on their bikes, right? So in a way, we kind of create a way for these for our driver partners to connect to a broader ecosystem, not just within Gojek, right? So that's kind of what we want to enable, right? So yeah, Go Screen's an example. The Gojek one that I mentioned earlier as well, where currently we mostly use it internally for asking drivers to do things like check and verify merchant data or parking locations. But there's no reason why we couldn't also open that up to external parties or other companies who need similar things done, right? Actually, it is a pretty big thing in Indonesia, needing kind of legs on the ground to validate ground data, right? And like we have a lot of drivers in all the major cities who actually can do surveys and who know their roads quite well, right? So I think that local knowledge that these drivers have is also a very valuable asset that at some point we would love to help them monetize as well, right? So I think that's kind of how the driver app fits into the whole thing. Obviously, our marketplace, at least on transport is, I guess, more 2 than 3-sided. So I guess Kat will talk more about the merchant app, but the way we see it on transport is that really, you cannot only favor one side without also growing the other. right? And that ultimately you need both happy consumers and happy drivers so that your marketplace reaches a large enough scale where you have reliability and drivers are incentivized to always provide the best service and customers' expectations are met. So basically, like, especially throughout times like these during the pandemic, it's really about making sure that, like, when one side of the marketplace kind of drops, that we also take care of the other side in preparation for when eventually the market turns.
Catherine, is the merchant app, is that also becoming a significant sort of revenue source for Gojek? Because it's probably it's the fastest growing app, isn't it? Is out of the three.
That's a very good question, right? I wouldn't call it like kind of a revenue. I think the way you have to look at the both driver app and the merchant app is an enabler, right? These two apps is basically enabling the flywheels to move, right? Let me try to explain what do I mean by that. Let's use the merchant app, then I'll go to the driver app after this, right? The merchant app is one of the, so if you go to merchant app, which is basically in the Play Store, you can download it as well, right? It's called GoBiz, B-I-Z. GoBiz is, if you go to it, it's exactly like Gojek app. It has a tiles, the way like you can go send, go ride, go food, but it's a tiles for the merchant. There is a tile called Go Food there that is basically doing order management and the catalog management. This is where the merchant can upload their menu, change their prices, change their operating hours, but also looking at the different kind of the orders that they got. This is order management part, right? There's going to be the reporting tiles as well, where they start seeing like, okay, how many orders I got, what is my trend, and we also developing this very, very swiftly to say that, hey, what kind of insights we can give to the merchant, right? Hey, your order is doing well on this time of the day. This is your most popular SKU, and so on and so forth. It's getting much better and better to help the merchant to run their business. Another one is also there is a tile, what we call the merchant promo platform, especially a tiles where the merchant can do a self-serve promoting. So they can do a voucher discount, they can do a SKU kind of a discount, they can do many different things. Basically, because if you think about it, we have now what 700,000-800,000 merchants, right? There is no way our sales team can cater to every single one of them. So the name of the game is how we can make them much more and more app-based self-serve kind of model. So it's a very simple step. They say, okay, let's say I want a restaurant, then after that I have a new outlet. I want to do a special only for my new outlet. They can do it themselves on the location and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of stuff that we are building. Another tiles is basically helping them if they want to take on our POS services as well. So they can look at the POS there, and then same thing as the driver. There's also kind of a micro loan that is catered to the merchants. So in that sense, I think you will start seeing the same way how Gojek now have 20 services in the consumer apps. You will start seeing the same thing happening as well on the merchant apps. Similarly, on the drivers, right? The drivers, previously, the driver app is only mostly is just for them to manage their business. Again, right? They're micro entrepreneur. This is their business, right? This is their livelihood on day-to-day kind of basis. But now there is another one. Gojek is another kind of like tiles that they can say, hey, I want to take on this additional task, right? There's also another one, the Go screen. I say, hey, I want to sign up for this, the screen to be put at the back of my motorcycle. So there's an additional income for me as well. But if you think about it, it's not so much. Yes, at the end of the day, it's an ecosystem for the Gojek, but we have to look at these two apps as really as an enabler to these three super apps is basically connected to each other, intertwined pretty deep actually, right? To enable different services being provided between one and another. So I wouldn't call it like really like the Gojek economics, but really the flywheel. That's the best way to explain it, right? One will start feeding to each other.
Okay, we actually only have 5 minutes left. Time flies. I have two more questions, one for Catherine and one for Dito. Let me start with Catherine. Cloud kitchen, it's a big thing. Can you tell us how it's going for Gojek, your cloud kitchen strategy, and how much is it contributing to the overall GoFood transactions?
As usual, I cannot disclose the exact number, how much is contributing, but I can say that it is definitely one of a big bad that we are having as well, especially with the pandemic situation. Why am I saying so? As you can imagine, right, during this PSBB or something like that, there's always an ups and down in the mall hours, operating hours. This is becoming like a lot of our partner merchant, they come to us and say, hey, how can you help us with this? Because some of my outlets are closed, right? That's number one. Number two, rental is always one of the most expensive cost component in any business in Indonesia, retail business in Indonesia, right? And then with the dine-in come down a lot during this pandemic period, of course, it becomes harder and harder for F&B merchant, F&B business people to kind of like sustain such a rental fixed cost, right? So what we are offering with basically with the Dapur Bersama is literally Dapur Bersama, right? Why? Because we can start spreading the cost, and because it's catered mostly, or not mostly, only to the online delivery, we do not need to be like in the smack dab in the like like best location on the street. We can be like, we can afford to be like on the second kind of like lane. The driver still can get in really easily, but then we can save on the rent on that one as well. So the criteria for Dapur Bersama become basically how we can cater into online food delivery order in the most efficient way. What do I mean by that? Every single Dapur Bersama, we have 27 of them right now. Each location will have like 8 to 10 merchant inside each of the kitchen. The ample parking size for the driver is number one. Number two is a free parking for the driver area, or like kind of subsidized parking for the drivers as well. And then it's easy for the driver just to park their motorcycle, step in, and you are there. There is a clear kind of like queuing for the drivers, very fast. So it's all being designed as such. So from the merchant, is saving their cost because of we are reducing a lot of that. From the driver, is ease of them to serve the order. From the customer, the impact when we do all this is, for example, number one, the delivery time for order coming from Dapur Bersama typically are faster. Because why? The driver doesn't have to go up and down, let's say the mall or something like that, right? The driver can pick up the food faster. If the food arrives faster, it means the food will be more warm, better quality, a better experience. And at the same time as well, because the end-to-end experience is being managed at our Dapur Bersama, the hygiene standard, safety standard, and everything is also much more, even more controlled and stuff. So I guess the way we look at it is Dapur Bersama is again one of the innovation that we see that, hey, how can we provide a better customer experience at the end of the day for our customer through enabling all these different players, right? The merchant, they can serve their food in a more affordable way. The driver, they can do it faster, they can do their job easier, and that will end up to a better customer experience in the end.
Okay. Quickly, Dito, about the expansion. Can you give us an update on how the expansion to the Philippines and Malaysia is doing?
I knew this question would come up. Thanks for asking it. But yeah, so on that point, I think one thing we've recently done with our international businesses is actually unify the tech platform and the brand, right? So if you if you look at our products in Thailand and Vietnam today, now it's all kind of back into the same Gojek app under the Gojek brand, which definitely puts us in a stronger in a strong position to execute, because now we can go with greater speed and scale with everything being in one place. In terms of what our plans for further growth across the region look like, it is something that we are still assessing, right? Though definitely we're definitely excited about potential for further growth in this region. I think we've definitely not maxed it out yet at all, especially for Gojek, right? So it's definitely something we are looking into.
No timelines for the Philippines and Malaysia?
Well, nothing that I can give you right now.
Okay. Last question about the recent fundings. So you have Facebook and PayPal, and there's also Telkomsel. Can you share with us what we can expect in terms of strategic synergies with Gojek? Will the PayPal and Facebook be limited to payment, or will it also have some synergies with transport and GoFood?
So as you see, right, the interesting part about Gojek is if you look at the list of our kind of a investor, you call it, is always a very strategic investor. That's one of the key criteria, right? Because we believe that we cannot do the mission that we are doing without all this kind of the ecosystem at the back of ours as well. So Telkomsel is the largest telco company of Indonesia. It's an Indonesian company. This is why we are so excited with this partnership as well, right? Gojek is always going to be like Indonesian company, and then like partnering with Telkomsel, they have such a rich kind of understanding of the market. One of the largest telco company. So there's a lot of strategic initiatives that we're going to be like working together again to improve the customer experience, right? At the end of the day. Similarly for the Facebook and PayPal, no, it's not just going to be limited to the payment, although mostly it's going to be that, but then also going to be the impact, right? If you think about it, if we can provide this strategic initiative at the end of the day, coming back, it will provide a better experience to a customer. For example, if the customer have more choices of what kind of payment they can do, and then for example, we are learning as well from their system how we can have a more seamless kind of a payment kind of a processes and stuff. It helps everyone. It helps the whole ecosystem. So no, it's not just for our payment business, but it's overall ecosystem of Gojek. At the end of the day, Gojek, GoPay, as many as people trying to put it that way, is one, right? It's basically one product is exists because of the other and the other way around as well. It's a really very close knit kind of coordination.
Yeah, maybe just to add a bit on Telkomsel, like we've actually collaborated quite closely before already as well on things like, discounts on data plans for our drivers, very important to our drivers as it's part of their OpEx, right? And we're super excited for this one also because they are quite a popular telco provider among our driver base as well. So we're looking forward to doing more and more things like that. Also for our customers. So joint promotions or bundles, stuff like that are definitely things we're looking forward to explore.
Very, very last question. This is into extra time now. For Catherine, we've seen two of Gojek subsidiaries, GoPlay and GoPay, taking on a separate or independent set of investors. Would that be on the cards for GoFood, or is it too central to Gojek's plans to be spun off?
This is a favorite question these days. I got this so much. So no, there is no plan for that. As you can see, again, right? I mean, we are a very connected kind of business. We are like, we just talk about it the whole 1 hour, right? I mean, like how the Gojek, the GoFood, Go Ride, transport, even a GoSend as well is also close knit. No, there is no plan for that. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I have time for one more. Maybe one last one for Catherine. So the expansion, GoFood abroad, is the GoFood model in Indonesia easily replicable for overseas markets, or does it need to be adjusted?
Oh, I think there is no one size fits all kind of thing, right? I think always there is going to be local nuance, local understanding where we have to kind of like tweak the product. But one thing that we can say is now that GoFood has been in 2 countries other than Indonesia, transport has been in 3 countries outside of Indonesia, what we know is we understand what is replicable, what needs to be adjusted to the local knowledge. That's what I think our knowledge now has been sharpened on that. So Dito and I are working very closely in our international kind of plan as well, because as you can see again, right, the stack, we call it the full stack, right? When you enter a country, having like multi-services definitely has a plus side on that as well. So this is the example of one of many, many, many things that Dito and I are working very closely together, because at the end of the day, it's a product that complement each other.
Okay, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time. All the best for Gojek going forward. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Pleasant. Thanks, Ardi.
Thanks for having us.